The thing that's really going to preserve historic landmarks is if the community is interested in them and feels a connection to them. Because no one wants to preserve a building that no one cares about, obviously. So unless you care about the buildings or the street, it doesn't matter whether you preserve it or not. And that's why I think projects like this are important, and the interpretive work that HHS does on a daily basis is important. Because we're always learning new things. There has been more of an emphasis in recent years on the pre-contact, pre-European history of the street, and so I think that's incredibly important work. We don't know their stories, and it's those stories that make places worth preserving. I think it has helped connect me more to the street. They play off each other, because the mayor of New Paltz is the inheritor of a 300-some-year-old tradition. Yeah, it's not because it's an ongoing story, not of the Huguenots, obviously, because the religious issues just aren't really there anymore. You can trace back the leaders of New Paltz, from mayors to the Duzine, being a part of that tradition. It does tie you more tightly into the community and into Huguenot. I think in places where they don't have that visible evidence, that history and sense of continuity gets lost. I don't think they really talk too much about the founders of Kingston. Gardner and some of the surrounding towns used to be part of New Paltz, but they don't have that old history either. Having this whole street full of visible reminders keeps it fresh in people's minds. And I think people take a lot of pride in the stone houses. It's definitely knitted very strongly into the identity of New Paltz, and the people who, whether you're born here or come here later, that becomes part of your identity as well, even if you're not one of the members of one of the families. Just because it's us, it's the story of our town, and that's why, when you find out you're member of one of the families, it sounds so mafia-like, but once you learn you're part of one of the families, that just gets deeper and stronger. The street has been more and more formalized, you know what I mean? So it's not that Huguenot Street gets bigger, but things get more complicated, and there's more interpretive work that's done and layered on top of the work that came before. I think, and I don't know, I could be wrong, but I get the sense that there's more of a push now to see the street as a whole rather than a collection of isolated buildings. So, there was talk at one point about trying to get a historic street treatment so that it looked like a dirt road instead of asphalt, which is possible but expensive. Which is why it hasn't been done yet. And it's reflected in the name change, because it was the Huguenot Historical Society until just a few years ago. So rather than a genealogically based collection of family associations, it's more of a living, community museum. And I think that track is the right way to go, and I think it's the direction that Huguenot Street is headed. These buildings as historic landmarks are a relatively recent phenomena, as people moved out and the various families bought the properties to preserve them. I would have loved to have been here when there were still people living in all these houses, just to see that life on the street that's absent when you landmark something. Because I think that's the sense you get when you walk into the houses, is the sense of the people who used to live here. The period furniture helps, obviously, but I bet even walking into an empty stone house that's this old, you get a sense of how old they are and a sense of how many people have lived and born and died in these houses. Yeah, I don't think there's many places like it.